Well, here we are, July 29th, 2024, in Caracas, Venezuela. A strange interview because as we are talking, there's an attempted coup being organized by the United States and its allies against the Maduro government, who was elected just the day before. And there's also a counteroffensive going on by the Maduro government to have their sovereignty respected. What is the excuse for this attempted coup and the chaos that is going on this evening in the streets of Caracas? So-called fraud in the elections. In order to get a good grasp of both the electoral system in Venezuela, one should go back to 1999. Why 1999? Because in that year, Hugo Chavez, after having been elected in December 1998, supposedly a dictatorship and all that, in 1999, he had the wisdom to organize a constituent assembly. How was this organized? People at the grassroots elected delegates to the constituent assembly. Once elected, these delegates met for quite a long period of time in order to discuss the new constitution. Not only that, in the course of this discussion, they also had input from peoples at the grassroots regarding the Constitution, the articles, what it should be about. Once the draft Constitution was established and confirmed by the entire Constituent Assembly, it was then sent to a vote at the grassroots level. And the vast majority of people participated and approved that Constitution. Now, what is the main feature of this Constitution? I would say, amongst other things, there are 5 branches of the government, unlike most other countries. And one of the 5 branches of the government is the body or the branch that deals with the elections. It's an independent body. And this body is responsible for the elections. Now, the entire discussion and controversy now is this electoral body established by the Venezuelan Constitution the only sovereign body that decides upon the results of the elections? I say yes. Well, let's see how the elections actually take place in Venezuela. Now, based on my observation as an international observer, taking notes from while I was visiting, etc. Firstly, what was impressive, when the voter arrives at the polling station, the first thing that is done, they have a thumbprint of their thumb in a biometric ID machine, automatic modern machine. Why do they have this thumbprint? 2 reasons. One is to make sure that the person has been registered. In order to vote, you have to register beforehand. The second reason is to make sure that no one can vote twice. The person then goes to the voting booth, which is entirely automated, electric voting booth. On the screen, there's a touch screen with the names and the parties that are being presented, and the person just has to touch the screen in order to have their vote. Not only that, once that is done, there is a paper printed out, and the voter has the right to say, okay, that is right, I voted for that person, that's right. If there's a discrepancy, there's a mistake, then the person has the right to choose once again. By the way, this is important to take place because there's been a lot of attempts at sabotage against the electoral system in Venezuela. While this electoral system is highly automated, electronic, it is offline during the course of the elections. Why is that important? Because it can't be hacked and no one can get into it, no one can fiddle around with it in order to falsify the election results. Then, once the person has chosen the candidate and has been confirmed by the paper trail, the person then takes that paper, that ballot, and puts it in the ballot box. Now, once the elections are done, it is all automated. This is important because no one can really create a fraud that something is automated. However, 54% of the audited elections have to be confirmed, and if they are correct, those 54% of all the voting machines are linked to it as a T, exactly as the people have voted. Then it's considered that the system is working well, and there's no need to go for the full count of the paper ballots. Who is allowed to go there to verify that the votes are being correctly tallied? Every political party, including those who are organizing these disturbances in the street tonight in Caracas as we speak, they had a right to send people to all of the polling stations. Now, when I was there, I asked some of the representatives of the electoral council there in the local polling station, do they send people to all of these places? Possibly not, but it's their own fault. They do not have enough forces, enough people to send to each of the polling stations, even if they do have the right. But in any case, they have a right to do so, and they can verify with their own eyes if the paper trail is the same as the automatic electronic machines that register the touchscreen voting. If the person at the voting station, for example, from the opposition party, if they were a witness that there was discrepancy between, on the one hand, the mechanical voting and the paper trail, they have a right to contest that. But as far as I know, I never saw in all of their press conferences that they were, what was their experience in these polling stations? They never mentioned that. They had a right to go there. And, if they had a right to go there, did they find any discrepancies? Did they exercise the right to challenge any of the votes? We never hear about that. It's another indication, this whole thing about fraud, it is their fraud. I saw all of the steps of the elections, okay? And I knew about it beforehand. In fact, I studied the Venezuelan Constituent Assembly and the electoral system. In my third book, I have a chapter, it's called Cuba and its Neighbors, Democracy in Motion. One of Cuba's neighbors is Venezuela. And in that chapter on Venezuela, I deal with that whole process of the Constituent Assembly in 1999 and how the people on their own voted for the first time in the history of Venezuela on their own constitution, which includes the branch that deals with the electoral system. So I saw no indication that there's any possibility of fraud. It doesn't make sense. I mean, if the government wanted to organize a fraud, they would have the voting come like 55 or 60% in favor of Maduro. But it came out, just a bit over 51, 52%, which is a fair representation of how the voting patterns take place in Venezuela. What is happening now? The chaos on the streets, we know what it is all about. We've seen that before. And this is the same scenario. They're trying to build up a so-called president to replace Maduro as the real president. And I just read, just a few minutes before this interview, the Organization of American States are holding an emergency session because they're concerned about the situation in Venezuela. Does that not sound familiar? But we know that the United States is behind that, and this is a very serious situation. It is only their electoral board that can decide the outcome of the elections. And I think that other international observers, for example, in Canada or other countries, they cannot compromise even 1 centimeter on that, in my view, the main issue. The only sovereign body to decide the electoral outcome is the Electoral Council in Venezuela.